You want more on the Avs? You got it.
Honestly, does it really matter right now?
That's the problem, right?
No, just about anybody can get in front of a microphone and talk about hockey. How on earth do you get involved in something like this?
It was kind of a fluke.
It's funny that this podcast is going off the rails so quickly.
This is From the Cheap Seats, an Avalanche fan podcast from 9 News. Seated in the conference room, here are your hosts, Steve Staeger and Geoff Sawtell.
Oh man, we're going to need to make Darren update that. We are not in the conference room this week.
We've kind of upgraded.
This is nice, is it not? We've upgraded. We don't have to worry about noises coming in and distracting us, although they probably still will.
You just jinxed us there.
I know. We are in the green room, and we did this because when we were going to interview Gabriel Landeskog, there was a 9-line going on in the conference room that we didn't realize. So we had to move everything in here. We realized this is a much nicer studio than the other one. But oh well. Oh, that kind of just cut out. Sorry, guys. Arielle Orsuto, hi.
Hi.
The Avs beat reporter for 9 News.
Yes.
Is your official title.
I'll take that as my official title.
Among others.
Among a lot of other hats that I wear.
A relatively new face at 9 News.
Yes.
Great to have you. How long have you been here now?
About 2 months. So yeah, very new.
Okay, but you're getting into the beats and covering different things around town.
Yeah. I think I'm getting my feet wet in a lot of different beats. So
I
don't know that even counts as a beat at that point if I'm doing everything.
By the way, we're going to talk to Gabriel Landeskog a little bit later on in this episode. We talked to him last week or earlier this week before the season started. So we'll show you that interview in a little bit. But we want to know a little bit more about you because you're going to be in here all the time talking to us probably because you're the most accessible Avs person in the building. So sorry about that.
That's okay. Hey, I'm excited to be here. So a little bit about myself. I mean, I came here directly from Wichita, but I'm from the Philadelphia area. So I'm definitely from Hockey Town.
Yeah.
Big Flyers fan growing up. Actually, funny fact, I actually was an Avalanche fan a little bit growing up.
Really?
And it's just because of the team that was assembled at that time. When you're growing up like playing street hockey and stuff like that, you kind of imagine you're these all-stars. I had a Patrick Waugh jersey.
Nice. Did you play goalie on your street hockey team?
A little bit, but more just kind of loved the player that he was. I loved Ron Hextall as a Flyers fan, and so I kind of also branched out and loved Patrick Waugh. I don't know why.
That was the era of goalies.
It really was.
Yeah, you've got this would have been like the Eddie Belfour era,
right?
Ron Hextall, Mike Vernon, Patrick Waugh, just really great guys in goal at that point.
Yeah, with great mustaches too.
Yes. Yeah, it was the 90s after all.
It was.
That was acceptable back then.
It was, yeah. Before, the Minshew and all of them now have like all of the mustaches and they're kind of going crazy with those Gardner Minshew. Different sport, of course. But so that's kind of who I emulated as a kid growing up playing, street hockey and stuff like that. So I actually really did appreciate the Avalanche. That's kind of a fun fact.
Yeah. Did you ever think that you'd be covering them one day?
Never. But I saw that team growing up because I had season tickets to the Flyers. So I grew up going to, Flyers games for years and years and years. And so I always saw the Avalanche whenever they were in town, and I loved that team. So it's actually kind of really cool that I'm here, covering this new team that I think this team has that kind of special sauce, the same one that old team had.
Which is funny because it's also so much run by the old team.
Right.
I mean, you've got Joe Sakic making all these calls.
Exactly.
And he was so important in that team. So you were at the game last night.
I was.
The first game of the season. Avalanche beat the Calgary Flames 5-3. Mm-hmm. What did you see?
Well, first of all, my first time at the Pepsi Center, my first time at an Avalanche game. So, I mean, even just from, I'm going to put myself in a fan perspective for a second. Very cool experience.
Yeah.
And they did a great job putting on a great experience, and they kind of have to, right? Because that's the only way that you're really getting to see these games right now. So I feel like they're kind of upping the ante a little bit, saying that this is the experience you're going to get because, well, you got to come here to get it. And so for the opening night, it was pretty good. I mean, the light show, I tweeted out a bunch of videos of the light show and the introductions. They did a great job with all of that. Looked great. Don't know how long they're going to do that throughout the season, if they're going to keep doing that throughout the season. But
they tend to. They'll reuse sometimes that.
A couple different
main
times.
Open. Like they had the Westworld one last year. By the way, we weren't at the game because we had to go to a coworker's wedding, even though we have season tickets to the Avs.
Not bitter at all.
Yeah, we're not bitter about that.
A Thursday night wedding?
A Thursday night wedding.
That sounds like something I would do.
I was gonna say it's probably a money saver.
It's like very selfish, but like you kind of like just want to do it, like you know, because like you're like, well, and I could be in bed early. I feel like that's totally a me move.
Although we weren't in bed early.
Not as such.
I got home probably 11:30. Probably got to sleep at like 12:30. That's still pretty late.
That's like what time I was in bed too, and that's super late for me.
late
I'm such an early bird.
On a school night.
I
yeah.
know, on a school night.
It was rough. But so you got this first look at this team that is getting all of this talk in the NHL right now. A lot of people, like especially analysts who work on the East Coast, say, I'm going home and I'm watching the Avs.
Right.
They're excited about it. What struck you as the best part of that squad you saw last night?
Honestly, I mean, it goes without saying, Mikko Rantanen. And he held out for the whole summer, and boy, did it matter, you know? So he got paid, he got what he wanted, and it didn't matter that he wasn't there for all of those practices, for that training camp, for all of those preseason games. He picked right back up and looked better than he did last year.
Yeah. That goal on the power play was just so smooth. Actually, you know, the goal leading up to it, the only way we've seen this is based on highlights the Avs have tweeted out. But the goal right before it, where Gabe turns the puck over at center ice off the top of his stick.
Stop it. Just stop it right there.
Which, by the way, we were sitting at the wedding, and I had Jeff roll that back a few times because I wanted to make sure he kept his hands down, like that stick wasn't up high, and it wasn't. Those hands were low enough that wasn't batted down with a high stick. Gets it to Mikko on the backhand, and a great goal.
So I'm watching warm-ups, okay, from all the way up from the cheap seats, of course.
Yes.
And
yeah, you actually the press box is right near our seats.
Yes.
We know this because we have used the press
because it's
Wi-Fi
all the way up
before.
at the because it's all the way up at the top. So I'm watching warm-ups, and the way that Gabe does his warm-ups, he takes the puck and he flicks it up with his stick all the way up to the rafters, catches it.
Yep.
Flicks it up, catches it. I've never seen this before.
It's a fan favorite. People go nuts over that during
Okay.
warm-ups.
It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But I'm watching him do this, and that's the same skill set that was used in that interception.
Yeah.
Because puck's coming, he sees it, cradles it down, basically like a lacrosse cradle almost, cradles it down with the interception, gets it, flicks it to Rantanen, and then that goal. I mean, I was mesmerized, absolutely mesmerized.
And Landeskog has some of the best hand-eye coordination I've seen from anyone in the league. I mean, he will do drills where he just parks in front of that and practices deflections, which is almost dumb luck for most people, and he'll sit there and just crank them out 10 in a row, no problem.
And I remember, I think it was during the playoffs last year, people were watching him do that during practice and then just score multiple goals that way I think it was during the playoffs, but some of the national hockey writers were noticing that, like, wow, he really practices that. And now I saw somebody on Twitter say that Nazem Kadri does the exact same thing. Works that tip in front of the net. It's a great way to get some practice and maybe build that awareness when you're in front of the net.
Well, and I was watching them during training camp a lot at all of their practices, and I've seen a lot of their drills lately where they are practicing those tip-ins. They are practicing a lot of those because that is such a natural part of hockey that you have to practice all of those strange occurrences because they're going to happen, and so you have to practice what happens if this puck is tipped up. Well, I've got to be able to ricochet it back down, and so the way that they're practicing that, they're making it less random and more,
Yeah,
it's
a regular thing.
Regular.
It's such a fast game that you can't stop and think about, hey, how am I going to handle it when the puck goes straight up? It has to be an automatic reaction. You have to have that as muscle memory.
And I find it fascinating.
Yeah, it's just so interesting that they would even work on something like that because it is so random. What the power play? Everybody's talking about the power play with Rantanen, Landeskog, Kadri, and McKinnon up front, and then Cale Makar on the back. But it sounded like the other power play unit was doing pretty well last night. Where I think we saw JT Compher score on that, and Donskoy, right?
And Donskoy scored on the first one, which looked like Sam Girard at first.
Yeah.
And I actually sat there with my tweet in hand for like 5 full minutes. Like I was like, Sam Girard with the first goal of the season, not hitting send. Not hitting send. Hitting send.
Did it take the announcer a few minutes?
It took them into like 3 minutes into the next series for them to actually announce that. Well, they first said Sam Girard, so we all sent it, and then they looked back and figured out that it was tipped in.
We also said that.
We set that out.
Yeah.
It tells you how much attention we were paying to the weather.
Well,
which,
I mean, you really couldn't.
Sorry, Marshall.
You couldn't really tell. I mean, was it a one-timer from Girard or was it deflected in from Donskoy? And it ended up being deflected in from Donskoy.
Yeah.
Donskoy had 2 goals. Of course, he had the empty netter at the end. Kind of almost had one for Calgary.
Ooh.
One of the goals at the Calgary end, he kind of, I think he did deflect in, but hey, it didn't matter in the end.
At the end, it's that score gets them past that rival. That's
all that matters,
quickly
right?
becoming a rival. We saw a couple of hits last night that were pretty interesting, including the
Lucic.
and the cheap shot on Zadorov after the Zadorov boarding penalty.
Well, that was the cheap shot. It was Lucic.
Where who hit Zadorov in the face.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Like sucker punched him
right
in the nose. Like that was a real hit. You know, like with hockey fights, like they don't actually have a whole lot of lower body strength because they're on skates. You know, they can't really put a whole lot behind the punch.
Yep.
That was a punch.
It did. You kind of saw his face move a little bit
Ooh.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, you saw some back there. That was a punch.
Yeah. Goaltending. What did that look like last night?
Honestly, so because I said this last night in my live shot at 10 o'clock, I was impressed with the way that Grubauer came out in the third period. The way he came out from the first 2, because I didn't think he looked very sharp very, very early. He came out in the third period looking like he was like he needed to prove himself there. Because man, I mean, he was saving they were putting fire at him, and he was saving everything. Because they really weren't shooting a whole lot in the first 2 periods, and he was letting everything past him.
Yeah.
And then in the third, I mean, they outshot the Avalanche in the third period, and he was saving everything. So I think that he picked it up in the third.
Which is something you really want to see out of your goalie. I mean, everyone's going to have an off night early in the season, getting the cobwebs out. But being able to bear down focus when you have to.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I like the way they look last night. Then again, and we are having that experience that a lot of fans are having right now, having not seen the entire game.
Yes.
I don't know how to judge it.
It's hard.
It's really difficult to judge it. It's something that I hope that they get this thing sorted out soon. We're going to talk a little bit later on in the show with a professor from Metro State, a marketing professor, just about because we tried to get Altitude on the record today, and Altitude, I think the CEO who's talked to us throughout the week just wasn't available. But the question is, did last night move the needle in that debate? I don't know. There was an interesting article in the Post this morning kind of recapping last night and talking about attendance numbers at Pepsi Center, which have gone up by about the average attendance in the last year went up about 1,500 people a game. And the question is,
but is it because they're winning?
And I put a poll up on Twitter today wondering, would you give up, or would you buy a seat to a game if you couldn't watch it on TV? Specifically for that reason. And I don't know if the average fan has that kind of money
Would
to
probably
blow on a
love to,
ticket.
but yeah.
Because, we get them very, very cheap because we buy them in a giant package. But when you're buying them solo, I mean, that's a pretty expensive night for a family to go to a game like that. And you got to put on a show, like you said.
Yeah, I think the two things are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Like, I think that the reason why the attendance is up is because both of the teams that play there made it to the second round of the playoffs last year. So people want to see a winning product, and that's why they were going. I think that this whole debacle with Altitude is not necessarily going to make more people go. They'll go to see a winning product, but I don't think that this is going to drive them to go. I think this is just, honestly, it might drive more fans away.
I'm wondering that too. I mean, and if you read the vibe on Twitter right now, in the beginning of all of this, it was pro-Altitude and anti-cable companies. And now a lot of these fans are getting so frustrated that they're just kind of calling out the Cronkies and saying, we need to get something sorted out here. And this is on you too.
People were attacking me on Twitter yesterday for live tweeting the game, saying, why are you rubbing it in my face that you're there and we can't see it? And I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that I'm actually trying to paint you a picture of what's happening since you can't see this game.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do actually a public service by explaining what's going on here because really there's no other way that you're seeing this game.
But that speaks to the anger that's out there.
Exactly.
Everybody's
and that's my
upset.
point. And that's my point. I don't think that this is going to bring more fans into the game. I think it's driving them away. Because they're not even interested in live tweeting.
Which is remarkably sad when you look at this team You don't want to drive fans away
No.
right now because this team is so good and honestly probably has its best shot at a deep postseason run, if not a championship, that it's had in the last 10 years.
Yeah, if fans are not on the bandwagon yet, they better jump on. And
Yeah.
it's a shame that they can't watch nightly.
And we see it, twice in the mid 2000s when the two lockouts.
Right.
Attendance went down, viewership went down when it came back because people, those sort of on the edge fans that would watch because it was fun, forgot that and just stopped paying attention. To your point, I mean, and on this one team basis, we're absolutely at a risk of doing that again.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to as the beat reporter this year? I mean, is there anybody you want to talk to? Who's your dream interview?
Well, honestly, I just want to get to know these guys a little bit more and trying to find their different quirks and stuff like that. So we're starting a franchise in our sports department called Mic'd Up Mondays. We're miking up different athletes of all different levels. From NHL, NFL down to high school, just all different athletes.
Which is cool because you also are covering prep sports, I should say, which is an important beat that this station has had for a long time.
Steve, I'm covering it all.
You're all over the place. I don't know how you can get to games and do all this, and I'm always amazed by all of you back there because
Cloning.
There are a million things to do and 5 people to do them.
Hey, we are not all heroes wear capes.
Yeah.
We wear moto jackets instead.
And you drink giant 7-Eleven big gulp of Mountain Dew and just drive around from high school game to high school game at night. I
Diet
remember
Dr.
that.
Pepper.
Diet Dr. Pepper. Good for you.
Yeah.
That's somewhat healthy. There's no
Little
calories in there, right?
A little bit.
I was gonna say I just do the big gulp of Mountain Dew when I would drive between games to shoot football games in my last market. It was nuts.
Anyway, where I was going with that.
Yes. Mic'd Up Mondays.
So this all started because one day at training camp, I was talking to Pierre Belmar. And he struck me just as a very interesting guy. And so I came back. I just asked him, can I mic you up and just do a whole story with him? And I loved the way that the story turned out. So just being able to mic up different players in the locker room, not necessarily, your Landeskog or, your Rantanen. Yeah. Getting to know some of the other guys down there.
Ryan Graves,
Exactly.
Grave Digger, our first, which is the nickname that we are now obligated to call him because that's what he said he likes to be called on the show.
Okay, so we
I
went
don't know
out.
if he said he liked it.
All right, so miking up Grave Digger then.
Yeah, mic up Grave Digger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just getting to know the guys in just a different way. And so really, I don't know that I have one dream interview. It's getting the dream interview.
Getting the great story out of someone. Yeah. All right. Arielle Orsuto, you're the best. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it. I know you have to go run to high school football and then
3 different games.
Yeah, and then lacrosse and bowling and swimming and all this other stuff that you have to cover. So our thoughts are with you as you're out driving around tonight. Thanks for coming in. We're going to talk. This was an exciting interview that we stole from Tom Green, who had him in here earlier this week. Gabriel Landeskog, the captain of the Colorado Avalanche, sat down with us earlier this week. We'll play that interview next.
Colorado is a sports state. The 9 News app puts all of our great stories in one place. From the pros to the preps, you'll find it all. Plus the latest Broncos update from insider Mike Klis. The 9 News app. Download it today.
Gabriel Landeskog, 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 Gabriel Landeskog.
Does that fire you up?
Sure does. That's awesome.
A little Hampus Liebman to bring us into the interview with Gabe Landeskog. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Do you know about this song? Do you know the history of all this? And have you the Miko song and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I know the Miko song. That was, that was a bit of a viral hit last year. Went crazy, but yeah. And then I think I've heard this once or twice. My wife might have found it and played it for me. But yeah, I love it. It's I haven't put it as my ringtone yet, but I might.
You've got our permission now. It was Hampus Liebman, Swedish guy too, who he has reason to write a song about.
Awesome. I appreciate my Swedes.
Good stuff. Thanks for coming in. I can't believe we have you in the Cheap Seats podcast. That's
awesome.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me.
Let's chat about this week. So Mikko Rantanen comes back, and everybody sees the video of you welcoming him back to practice. How did you find out about that whole thing, and how excited were you when you found out that he'd signed?
Well, so actually it was during our last preseason game in Dallas, whatever it was, last Saturday, I believe. And during the first period, TV timeout, and we get called to the bench, and Bedsy, our coach, he's like, Big Moose is signed. We're like, oh, he is? That's awesome. Like, obviously, you don't expect to hear that during the middle of a TV timeout during a game, but, it was awesome. Obviously, a sigh of relief going through the bench at that point. Everybody was just, you try not to think about it or talk about it too much at that point. You understand that it's business and he's got to do what he's got to do, but, you miss him. He's one of your friends and he's one of your teammates. So, I wanted to make sure I welcomed him with open arms when he got back to practice rink yesterday.
Was that something you thought of doing early on in this process, or was that sort of a spur of the moment?
No, it was sort of a spur of the moment, and I can't really take all the credit for it.
You didn't make that sign?
I did not actually make the sign, but I had plans that I was going to obviously, give him a big hug when he got here and meet him in the parking lot. But with camera crews and things like that out there, obviously we had to spark it up with a sign. So, but I think Mika was happy, and deep down inside, he didn't want to show too much emotions when the cameras were around. But I think he was very happy and relieved to be approached that way.
What's that bond like? Can you talk about when you find a line that gels like that? You and Nate and Mikko have done that in the last, I want to say, year and a half.
Yeah.
What does it feel like when you have something like that in your grasp?
It really is hard to explain. I mean, I think every good line says the same thing. They say you complement one another, and I think that there's something to it. But I think that for us, it just goes further than that. It's almost like we think the same way. Almost like on the ice, we're trying to create offense the same way. We're trying to fill spots and not necessarily get locked in positions, but we're just trying to fill so we can all play in all different areas of the ice, and that way I think we can be pretty dynamic. Now, it starts with hard work. That's really where it starts for us. When we're not skating or when we're not working for loose pucks or forechecking, whatever, we're not going to be successful. And we've gone through some colder periods, but for the most part, you're playing with, those two guys. I mean, they're two elite players in the league, and it's going to be a lot of fun most nights. So we're looking forward to another year, and for us, it's really just another year to prove ourselves and make sure that we hit the ground running here starting Thursday.
You talk about a reason to prove yourself. Right now, there is a lot of noise in the league about you guys, and the noise is positive. It's not negative. How do you guys channel through that and kind of keep that out of your heads and from getting in your heads at the beginning?
Well, you know what? A couple of years ago, obviously we're coming off a 48-point season at whatever it was, the worst season since 04-05. Coming into the following season after that, everybody's saying they're not a playoff team. They can't. They're going to be the worst in the NHL again. Blah blah. But for us, we just kind of canceled that. We just saw it as noise, and we didn't worry about it. We didn't listen to it. We just did our thing. And then last year was sort of the same thing. People didn't think that we were going to be a playoff team. We managed to squeeze in, managed to take San Jose to 7 games, and so it was the same thing. We just kind of black that out and see it as noise, and then don't worry about it, and we just kind of do our thing. And that's going to be the main message going into the season again. I mean, whether the outside expectations are high or low, positive or negative, we don't care. We got our internal expectations, and I think that's what the most important thing is. And for us inside that room, we put pressure on each other, and that's what it needs to be as well. But we don't like to listen to too much to the outside noise.
Were there lessons learned from last year? You guys, like right around the turn of the year, it seemed like you couldn't win a game.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there was something that turned around. What did you take away from that experience, and how do you use that moving forward?
Well, I mean, we were in a great position, whatever it was, December 1st. And then December 1st until March 1st, I think we won 5 games or something like that. It was something, like you said, it was really tough, and we couldn't seem to get things going, or we couldn't end that slump that we were in. So, learning from that and inside of that span of horrible hockey games for us, or not all of them are that bad, but just we couldn't find ways to win hockey games. I mean, it was our overtime record, which was horrible. I think we only won 3 games in overtime, whatever it might have been. And you think about that, I don't know how many we lost, but you think about you win just half of those. I mean, that's an extra 7-8 points. All of a sudden, you're in a playoff spot. Another part of it was we weren't really getting that consistent goaltending, and our special teams weren't good enough. And so there's kind of 2 or 3 things that combine into a bad spell of hockey. And then, we come down to the end of the year, and we were hoping it wasn't going to get to a point where we slipped out of a playoff spot for us to start playing again, but that's what it had to take. We slipped out of one, and then we had to fight our way back in. And I think that's the main message, really, to not find that consistency over the course of the period.
You guys were fun to watch during that period, too. I hate to dwell on the past. I don't want to do that because we're just talking about the bad season leading up to that. But now I do want to ask you how have you gotten over that? I'm going to call it a BS call. I mean, it was. The call in that Game 7, how do you get something like that out of your mind, and how do you reflect on that?
Yeah, I don't know if you will get over it completely. I mean, I think you have to. I mean, number one, you have to sort of put it in the back of your mind. You can't go your whole summer, your whole off season, and just dwelling on something that happened in the past and being pissed off at the world or whatever. You just can't do that. Or at least for me as a person, that's not who I am. At the end of the day, I chalked it up as, we're all human. We all make mistakes. Referees and people behind the scenes sitting in the video rooms, they can make mistakes too. And that's, at the end of the day, how I had to look at it. Other side of it is you only get so many kicks at the can to win the Stanley Cup for us. And who knows if last year could have been the year for us. We win Game 7, you roll into conference finals against a division rival in St. Louis, and all of a sudden, you're 4 wins away from Stanley Cup, finals. So, but we're going to make sure that wasn't our only chance to win the Stanley Cup. We got a really good look at it this year, and it's up to us to make sure that we can get there.
There's been a lot of turnover in this team, especially some of the forwards coming in, trades, free agency. What have you been seeing out of them that has you excited for this year?
Oh, I mean, all of them look great. I mean, you look at Nazem Kadri, for example, on that big Kerfoot and Barry trade. He's a guy that I've always hated playing against, but it's a guy that you want on your team. And, you can't forget, before they got Tavares in Toronto, he scored 30-plus goals in back-to-back seasons. I mean, he's got top 6 offensive skill. Now, in Toronto, he was almost slotted as like a third-line centerman, kind of a shutdown guy in the playoffs, things like that. But he's got some high-end skill, and I think he's going to add a lot to our lineup and also on our power play unit, playing in that middle. So, Burakovsky, a guy from Washington, Donskoy from San Jose, both of those guys I look at guys like they just weren't able to completely unleash their full potential where they were at before. So, I think it's an awesome opportunity for them to hopefully get a fresh start and maybe get some, a really good season out of them, and when they can build off of that and move forward feeling good about themselves. And so really excited about it. All of a sudden we got forwards depth that we haven't had in a lot of years, so we're really excited.
We only got a couple minutes left. This is a fan podcast. It's all about the fans. I have to ask, what is this support base like here for you? What are the fans like compared to? I know you've only played here, but what do the fans mean to you guys?
Oh, listen, I say it all the time, and I try to explain to the fans how much they mean to us, but it's hard to put into words. But listen, without them, it wouldn't be the same. This dream job that we have wouldn't be the same. I know it's the game that we love, and it's just going out there on the ice with your 23 brothers, it's awesome. But without the fans being there cheering us on day in and day out and coming to the games, showing up, wins or losses, they're still there. It means the world to us. And playing here in Denver and feeling the support through social media, things like that, all over the country and all over the world, really, that it's hard to explain. But this is such a great sports town that I didn't know that coming in here, didn't know when I got drafted here, but obviously sharing the limelight with the Broncos, the Rockies, the Nuggets, the Rapids, Mammoth, you name it. It's such an awesome sports town that it's not just one sport that they get dialed into. It's all of them, and they support all their local sports teams, which makes this the best city in the world, in my opinion.
We got to let you go here in a minute because you got to go to a team dinner. You're all dressed up, by the way. Are you guys going to make Mikko pay for the team dinner, or is that
there'll be plenty of team dinners for him to pay this year. It won't be this one though.
Making him open up the wallet.
Oh yeah.
By the way, we brought you around the newsroom here, and I can say this because my fiance, huge fan, loves you. The ladies around 9 News were all like clamoring to get toward the studio here. I don't know.
I don't know what that was about.
I don't know what it's about either. But we appreciate you coming in, man.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
And
this is a blast.
Have a great season. Good luck. Hopefully we get you in here again at some point. And
absolutely.
We'll chat about it.
Yeah, awesome.
Gabriel Landeskog, we appreciate it. We'll play you out with your song.
Awesome.
If it's on your podcast or your ringtone.
There we go. Thanks, guys.
Coloradans are passionate about Colorado, and at 9 News, we love to hear all about it. Call, email, or find us on social media. 9 News listens.
So this altitude debate just keeps going on and on and on. And we should mention that we tried to get Matt Hutchings, who's the CEO of Altitude TV, for the show. He was busy today. I figured it would be better to talk to someone who can kind of talk us through the perspective of this debate. So Darren Dubersmith is a professor of marketing. Am I right, Darren, at Metro State University?
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Senior lecturer is my title, but that's cool.
Well, senior lecturer, professor, everything, extraordinaire. We'll call you that.
I'll take it.
Great.
I'll take what I can get.
So, Darren, let's. What have you seen in this whole debate? Who's handling it better than or which side is handling it the best, I should say?
Well, I mean, this debate is bigger than what we're seeing right now. This is something that's been going on for at least a decade, where the carriers sort of feel like that the content providers are charging too much money, and that there's not a commensurate rise in viewership, and they sort of blame each other for the lack of a rise in viewership, and so they're trying to get revenue. And if you can't get revenue from advertising, you got to get it from this carrier fee. And so it's a problem. My 82-year-old uncle in Los Angeles has to have 2 cable packages, 1 satellite and 1 cable, in order to get his beloved Dodgers, because the big provider, one of the big providers there, does not carry the Dodgers. So it's a much bigger issue than here. This is a national issue. It's a kind of the fragmentation of the media out there has really, it's starting to hit home. It's starting to really affect consumers. There's blame on both sides for sure.
What's the future of the regional sports network? Because it seems like this model now is not working.
It's definitely not. It's been broken for a long time, and it's vertical integration. So what happens is that the sport property wants to own their own arenas. They want to own their own radio stations. They want to own their own ticket service. They want to own their own pretty much everything. And so owning your own TV station means that you're vertically integrated in business, which means you have more control and you have control over pricing. The problem is that these networks continue to raise their prices almost every year. And this is one of the reasons why my Dish Network bill is $131 a month. It's because the carriers continue to raise prices. It all really started with ESPN, and Dish Network was really the first carrier to kind of balk and say, look, we're not gonna take this price. And so I think that these sports properties are sort of bullying the networks into accepting the higher prices every year. And finally, I meant carriers, not networks. Finally, the carriers are saying, hey, we've had enough. And so when you've got DirecTV and Dish Network and Comcast all sort of unified against you, I think you definitely have the lesser hand.
I was going to say, because we see these kinds of debates all the time, but it's not necessarily 3 networks all at once. And I wonder if that boils down to, is that just a bad business decision by Altitude to negotiate all these contracts to go at exactly the same time?
Yes, I really do think so. I think I'm a real fan of KSE usually. I mean, they've hired a lot of my students. We've been working with them with ticket promotions for years. And, I don't want them to throw me out of the arena. But, the bottom line is that I really have taken sides in this debate. And it's not just the KSE debate and the Altitude debate. It's really this nationwide problem of these sports teams and these leagues asking for everybody to pay for access to what used to be basically free for everybody. And so I think that it's broken. You're trying to get revenue from advertising. You're not getting enough eyeballs, so you have to charge more for the carriers. The carriers can't raise the prices any more than they have on consumers. I'm already paying $130 a month. And so it is a stalemate.
We should
and
see
who's going to blink?
We should see if we can get that bill reduced for you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And even if I tried to get rid of the sports package, it's hard to do because it's bundled together. And so the idea is, you get all your sports or none of your sports. And I think the Comcast CEO, I forget his name. I think he said it best. He said, we want people to pay for altitude if they want to watch it. We don't have enough of our viewers that really care about this. And so will Avs fans and Nugget fans and Mammoth fans pay a little extra to access this? Or will everyone else continue to subsidize what really amounts to fewer and fewer viewers?
Yeah, and when you're looking at that sort of core base, earlier on in the show, talking to Arielle, Steve mentioned that early on in this process, it seemed, at least on social media, that the fan base was pretty united in blaming this stalemate on the providers.
Yes,
it seems like as this goes on, that more and more of that is not flipping sides, but starting to assign some blame to altitude as well. And how much of a problem is that for altitude from a negotiating standpoint when it's publicly starting to lose that sort of public opinion?
It's a big problem. I mean, the first thing you do is shoot the messenger. If you bought something from a store, you're first going to blame the store, for carrying the product in the first place. And then you might look deeper and go back to the original product. And so, we sort of look at the retailer. We sort of look at the end point. And I think, people are looking a little bit deeper and they're starting to put two and two together that these, this stuff used to be advertising generated, the revenue. And it's now we're all paying so much more for access to all of these channels that just very few people really watch. And Altitude has always had trouble getting advertisers, really from day one. They put their ads in that little ticker that they've had on the bottom. They have enough programming, I think, but they've really had trouble generating ad revenue. And that's because they haven't had enough eyeballs. And so to me, that's really obvious. I don't know to the average person who's looking at this if it's as obvious, but from what you're saying, the fans are finally saying, hey, look, Kroenke, you guys are one of the most profitable sports organizations in the entire world. You own this, you own that, you own this, you own that. Why do you have to make so much money on altitude? Why can't you use it as a loss leader? Why can't you use it as something to develop your casual fan base? You get more customers by offering it on a My 20 or a Denver's 2, where everyone can access it.
I appreciate the My 20. I think we should do that.
The point is make it accessible to everybody. Why is it that half the people in Los Angeles can't get the Dodgers?
Yeah, or what it's about to happen with the Cubs. The Cubs used to be on WGN in Chicago, and now the management and the ownership of the Cubs have decided to start their own broadcast network that they're going to provide to some people that you've got to cherry pick.
It's everywhere, and it's literally hundreds and hundreds of examples now. And so I think that we have reached sort of a threshold where everyone has had all they can stand, and they can't stand no more. And I think that something's got to break. And honestly, what has to break is that the sport properties are really the ones who are charging too much money. They're limiting access. They're tripping over dollars to pick up quarters. They should be developing their fan base by offering this stuff on television, the broadcast TV. You get more eyeballs. The more eyeballs you get, the more ads you can sell. The more ads you can sell, the more revenue is generated. The more people will pay for your service. And so they're just sort of, they're losing sight of the whole picture of developing a fan base. You want to have the fans have access to your product. And really the wrong answer is the coach of the Nuggets answer, which was, why don't you come on down to the arena?
Yeah, and, I saw Michael Malone's quote, say, get your butts in the seats.
I'll pay $700 in the fan cost index to bring, my wife and 2 kids and everything. And sure, I got $700. I mean, if he'll loan me a little money, I can do that.
Well, and there's a potential, the Chicago Blackhawks did something like this with their old owner. And a lot of people think that served the franchise very, very poorly. He would not put the games on TV when the Blackhawks were in town. And then when he passed away and his son took it over, he put them on TV, and now look at where the Blackhawks are now.
It's the NFL blackout rule. I mean, the NFL used to have their blackout rule where if the stadium didn't sell out, then they wouldn't show the game in that market. And that started to fade out about 20 years ago, and I think it went out completely about 10 years ago when they realized that there's more money to be generated in media rights than there is in actual butts in the seats. And that's the case. Media rights have actually surpassed attendance as far as revenue across the board with sports teams. So it's really important that everybody get their revenue here from this. But it's important also that the people behind Altitude realize that they're that TV really nurtures the fan base. It's a very easy way for people to get access to the product. And then if they like the product, then of course they'll go to the arena. It's really not the other way around. And so I think that's where they're sort of tripping over dollars to pick up quarters. They're saying we want to get all this revenue from our altitude unit, but we're going to sacrifice revenue from all these other units. And it just doesn't make good business sense to this guy.
So I get this question on Twitter all the time, as if people think I can just walk upstairs and flip a switch and say, oh, the Avs games are now on Channel 20. Why aren't they on broadcast TV? Is that just a money-making perspective for the team?
I wish I was more of an expert on broadcast media, because I think it's become so much more complex than it used to be. But yeah, my understanding really is that once you give it to broadcast TV, you really lose control of the revenue streams. And so the idea in business is to be vertically integrated, is to control as much of the supply chain as you can. And so if you can own your own network, if you can own your own arena, in 2020, you're gonna do that. So it's the business model. It's the way things are now. I believe that we have to go back to the broadcast TV model. I believe that we have to go back to the access model, where more fans, more potential fans, younger fans can access this sort of thing. You obviously need to be streaming it as well, but you don't want to be a pure play streamer. Nobody wants to be a pure play streamer. You also want to be on television. So we're still trying to figure this out. The media model is 100% broken right now when it comes to the regional sports that we're trying to enjoy.
And you see the numbers. NBC will run Wednesday night rivalry games, and even teams that have no real direct connection to Colorado, those ratings are very good here. People want to see the games, even if it's not their team. They enjoy watching hockey. You'd think that based on that, you could make a good argument alone.
Well, I mean, it's all about the actual number of eyeballs. And so the point is if you can't sell ads on your network, you probably don't have enough viewers. And the carriers aren't stupid. They deal with dozens and dozens and dozens of partners. And so, they know the difference between a network that's going to get them the viewers they need to raise their subscription rates, or at least to stave off the loss in subscriptions, or versus the networks that frankly aren't really measuring up to what they're charging. It's just a cost benefit kind of thing. So I don't know that many people are sort of watching these games. There really aren't enough people really watching the Avs at the Nuggets, and that's the real problem. If the viewership was much higher, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation at this point.
When do you think this gets resolved? And do you think it is resolved with a deal with the cable companies and the providers?
I don't know, man. I read Kiz's thing this morning from the Denver Post, and it just scared the heck out of me.
Yeah, Mike Kisla talking to Stan Kroenke, and Stan Kroenke said, basically, let your cable company know this is balderdash, and we are the small people in all of this.
Right, we're the little guy here.
Which I don't know if that's true. I mean, you're still talking about a sports franchise, not to mention one of the biggest sports industries or sports companies in the world.
And Stan Kroenke,
I think they're one of the most profitable as well, and they're again vertically integrated. It goes back to owning everything and controlling everything. So these carriers are large too, but I think people realize that the carriers are hurting. They've been losing subscribers. The cord cutters have been going to the streaming services, which are also rising in cost, by the way. That's a whole nother issue.
Yep.
But the whole point is that I think people are realizing that even Comcast and DirecTV, which is owned by AT&T, they've got far deeper pockets than Dish Network. Dish Network is really the company that's sort of the weakest of those three, and so that's why they're usually the ones who stand up first and say, "Hey, you guys are bullying us. We don't want to pay this price to be able to offer this service to our customers. It's just not worth the price every single year when we're really not getting more viewers." And it just really comes down to that. So I think ultimately it's up to Kroenke to decide if they want fans to access their product. Clearly, going to a game, even if it sells out, obviously it's a very limited audience. There's a capacity. When you broadcast something, there is no capacity. The reach is astronomically potentially larger. And so to say, you got to come down to the arena is just sort of real short-sighted. It's not something that really a marketer should be looking at. And of course, you're not doing anything for not only getting new customers who can access your product, but the goodwill that you've built amongst casual and avid fans that you have now. You're diluting that, you're souring that, and you're doing it. Why? Because of a few bucks. I mean, this is clearly not a company that's struggling. And I think that they could use altitude as a loss leader. Take a loss on your network so you can lead potential customers in, you can nurture your casual fan base, and so you can get more butts in the seats, you can sell more apparel, and ultimately you can get more viewers and charge more for media rights justifiably.
Because
the way to justify that,
the way these teams are playing, they are going to be moneymakers for you for at least a while.
That's the way we look at it. But if people can't access it, people can't access it. And the point is streaming is well and good, but it's very fragmented. You're just not going to get the viewership. The nice thing about cable and satellite is that they bundle it together for you, and it's easy to access everything sort of at the push of a button. You can't do that with streaming right now. And so I think the streamers are sort of losing their audience because of that fragmentation. And so the nice thing about this whole cable satellite thing is, hey, we're all together. This is a traditional model that's been around for 45 or 50 years. And the bottom line is when the programming gets too expensive, the carriers can only charge us, the consumers, so much for to get cable. And so the buck's got to stop somewhere. And I think it stops with Mr. Kroenke right here.
Darren Dubersmith, special lecturer at Metro State University, marketing expert. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's a good perspective. We appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it, and no charge today.
No charge. All right. I'm going to go save up for the next time. Appreciate
Thanks, boys.
it. We'll talk soon. All right. Okay. Bye-bye. So that perspective is something that I think is being kind of lost in all of this.
Yeah.
And I think that the Avs and Altitude would like you to lose it in all of this because they want you to put the pressure on the cable companies.
And I feel that the article you were referencing in the Post today, probably, from that overall perspective, creating this image of, we're the little guy, maybe Stan Kroenke not the best mouthpiece for that message. One of the 10 richest people in the country, I believe. It's sort of hard to, from any perspective, take him seriously when he says, we're the little guy in this. Comparatively, Altitude Sports, yes, is much smaller than these providers, but hearing him say that sounds like he's just trying to manipulate you, and that's not, from a PR perspective, I would imagine, what they're going for.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see if this gets resolved.
Yeah.
I for one, I hear all of you. I know that you've all been asking, why can't you just pop this on Channel 20? I would love to have a boss in to tell you why not. I can tell you that's probably has a lot to do with the financial model that you heard Darren Dubersmith talking about there. I just don't know if that would work for what the team needs and then for what Channel 9 needs. I mean, do you get the eyeballs from an Avs game? I would argue you probably would get more than you would for some of the things that are on our air. But
is it enough to justify what it would cost to get it?
I don't know. Maybe we'll leave it up to Channel 2. Let them figure that out. Right. A couple of things. Did you see the article about final thoughts here? Did you see the article about the new, speaking of NHL big time productions, they want to do something like the Hank Williams Sunday Night Football song and have Green Day do it? What?
I mean, I am a Green Day fan going back years and years and years, but
sure,
it's sort of an odd matchup.
Yeah. I mean, it speaks to the fact that NBC wants to try to make the NHL more marketable and more profitable. And
for sure.
More power to them. I think Sunday Night Football is one of the best sports programs on television. Definitely. I'm not lying. It's so well produced. If they put that kind of effort into NHL games, how awesome would that be?
It would be spectacular. I mean, it's hard to imagine objectively as great as it would be just because, you have 16 Sunday night games a year for NFL. How many of those would they do for hockey? And when you have teams playing 82 games, it would be spectacular to see. Is it possible? God, I hope so.
Gosh, I hope so. I mean, I don't think you're going to get a game every night on NBC, but maybe get rivalry night and put it on the network.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, primetime programming since streaming has started has struggled.
Yeah.
And everything I've read says that live event TV, especially a sporting event, is one of those things that draws people out. Now, I'm no expert. I don't know if the numbers would be there. I don't know if it would be profitable. That's someone else in some other room in this building and some other room in New York City's job to figure that stuff out. I just wonder if it gets to the point where we're going to have to try it.
Yeah. I mean, there's something different about watching that live event. You can watch a replay of a game online, but you've probably already overheard from someone how it ended. there's something about that live element that you would imagine would be a big ratings bump.
I was reading a survey today that said they had done market research on people who cut the cable or cut the cord, whatever you want to call it. And the market research showed that even in live sporting events, people were putting antennas on their TV and not relying on the streaming side because they don't want to get on social media and have something spoiled for them because their stream was lagging.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating. And why we don't exploit that more.
Yeah.
I mean, like that gives our industry something. By the way, the other thing that people keep bringing up, and I had someone, I was interacting with someone on Twitter today, and they said, well, I watched the game last night, and I did it this way through this website. And it was totally one of those illegal streams.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I don't think people realize that, like, that's not legal.
Yeah.
That's not legit. That is a ripped, like, stream. Somebody else is supposed to be making money off of that.
Yeah.
It's illegal. And it was funny. I had to, like, explain this to this person that, well, you are free to do whatever you would like and put whatever potential viruses that might bring along onto your computer. I'm not going to do it because I make money from a TV station, and I believe, much like the musicians of the world who didn't like Napster, that, people go through, they spend lots of money to make these giant productions for these hockey games and football games that we ought to be paying our fair share to watch them.
Definitely.
So,
and if you want to support it, they're not going to be able to keep doing that if the money disappears.
Yeah.
If you want to keep enjoying that production level, it has to be supported in some way, whether that's through advertising, whether that's through your cable bill. There has to be some sort of payoff for them to keep putting that quality of product out there.
Yeah. One last point on Altitude. I wonder if we can dial him up. We had a listener in Montana, and I told him I was going to call him next week, so I'm probably going to catch him completely off guard here. But maybe let's call him up.
See what happens.
And just I'm all about just finding out what's going to potentially happen. But Evan from Montana wrote in to say he gets Altitude. Because remember, we put out, he was the first person to email cheapseats@9news.com and tell us that he had Altitude. So I was writing back to him this morning, and he had a meeting from 1 to 3. It's 3:08 now. I didn't realize we'd be taping so late. I'm going to give him a call.
Evan, if you're still in that meeting and you forgot to turn your phone off, we apologize.
If I can find his number. There it is. Let's give him a call and see if he's actually there. Yeah, what? He's probably going to think this is a spam phone call or something,
Probably.
Right? Hi, you've reached Evan.
Hi, this is Evan.
Hey, Evan. Steve Staeger. How are you, man?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. Guess what? We were still taping, so we just decided to give you a call. I apologize for doing this on the spot.
That's just fine.
But you're on from the cheap seats, my friend. Jeff is here.
Hello, Evan.
Hey.
You're probably sitting at your desk right now thinking these guys are a-holes for calling me. So I apologize.
No, just fine.
All right. So you have Altitude.
I do.
Where are you? Where are you in Montana?
I'm in Billings. It's about kind of south central Montana. So
South Central. Yep. So how did you number one, how did you find this podcast?
I am a podcast junkie, I found, and was just searching Colorado Avalanche on there and kind of came across you guys. I've listened to a few others, and so.
Well, you're the man. I couldn't believe that you emailed us all the way from Montana, and it just shocked me. I'm so pleased. I'm grateful to talk to you. How did you become an Avs fan all the way up in Montana? Is it just because that's what you get up there?
Yeah. So as a kid growing up, we had a super low level minor league team here, and sorry.
Oh, you're good. No, we completely caught you off guard, and I apologize for that. I should have sent you an email, but we were on the air, and I figured, what the heck?
Oh, you're just fine. But so yeah, we had like a, I think, NAHL team here, and so my dad and I would go to games, and sorry, I got a cold.
Oh, you're good.
And yeah, I've got a lot of family down in like the Fort Collins area, so we'd come down. go to Avs games and stuff, so just became an Avs fan too.
How about that? Well,
cool.
We appreciate you listening to the podcast, and maybe we'll have you on next time you're in Fort Collins, or next time you get down here, go to an Avs game. Maybe you come in and we'll chat with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love to hear that story. Evan, you're the man. We know someone who has altitude now, so if we all have to commute, we'll come and catch an away game up in Montana.
Absolutely, anytime.
Have a good one, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, you too.
Bye-bye. He's probably cussing us out right now.
Justifiably.
I cannot believe that those guys actually.
We're going to see our subscriber number tick down by 1.
Yep, right. He's like, I'm not downloading this anymore. Hey, how about that? A podcast junkie who Darren Dubersmith just texted me and said we can call him anytime we want to.
Let's call him back right now.
Yeah, right. Darren, what did you think of that phone call we just had with Evan? But Evan was not the only piece of out-of-state feedback that we got this week. Taylor, who was on the show a few weeks ago talking about the big heads, sent along a message that she received from some people in Toronto who listened to From the Cheap Seats. This thing is catching on.
It's international now.
How about that? It's pretty cool.
Toronto has a good fan base. It's not surprising that they're diehard hockey fans. It is surprising that they're listening to a local Avs podcast.
Well, maybe they're trying to get get the dirt on Tyson Barrie.
I don't know if there is any dirt. I mean, he's a good guy.
Maybe they're trying to investigate if there is dirt. But no, it was good to hear from them. I think they're a big head society there, and they were offering to help make big heads for Taylor and Adrian, which is great. We should have Taylor on the show again, too, by the way. It looks like she's writing for a publication now, an Avs publication. There are some great fans. Keep your suggestions for people that you want us to talk to coming, please.
Yes.
Next week, I believe, we're going to talk to the emergency backup goalie for the Colorado Avalanche.
This is one of my favorite things in hockey, that is a thing.
He talked about, just talking to him and kind of doing a pre-interview with him on the phone, what a surreal experience that whole thing is, being able to do or being able to sit in the arena and just wait and thinking that you might potentially be entering an NHL hockey game.
Yeah, the starter has the flu, the backup trips getting out onto the ice, and all of a sudden you're in an NHL game.
Yep. You never know. So he was there last night for the, by the way, we're taping this on a Friday. I feel like anytime I mention dates, I need to mention that we're taping this on a Friday. Because, by the way, Mikko Rantanen signed.
Boy, let's talk about that contract.
Mikko Rantanen signed, which means our episode last week was a little dated, but we got into that a bit with Gabe, which was pretty cool. So he's going to chat with us a bit about some of his mission, too. He's talking about working with goalies on mental health issues, which I never would have thought, but it really is a thing. And he's going to chat about with us next week.
I mean, that topic just in general, regardless of sports or anything, is a very important conversation to have. And, let's be honest, hockey goalies are probably some of the most neurotic people out there.
Sure. You heard Sarah mention that last week.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you start doing it professionally, whether you're in the minors, juniors, or even up to the NHL level, the amount of pressure that comes on you is got to be astronomical. And so having a support group to talk to deal with, whether it's game related or just life related, is a huge resource.
Because so much falls on them too.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what we were just talking about with Arielle at the top of the show about goaltending and the big questions about goaltending with this potentially championship team that's here in Denver this year. The number one question we have is, will Philip Grubauer be able to stand up to the challenge in his first season as the main starter?
And just mentally, that's got to be one of the toughest positions to play in all of sports because it is all on you.
Yeah, it really is. I'm going to hit the sounder and start to get us out of here. It's actually going to work this week. We had a couple of takes. By the way, so Avs they've played the Wild since we taped this podcast. We'll talk about that game next week. But the Avs play on Thursday night against the Boston Bruins, and then they finish up that homestand against the Arizona Coyotes.
I'm actually going to get to go to that game. I'm very excited.
You get to go to that game. I get to go to the Bruins game. It'll be my first one of the whole thing. So anyway, rate, review, subscribe. Please do all of that for this podcast. And if you have someone who should be on the show, please email cheapseats@9news.com. Get at us at 9cheapseats on Twitter. I'm Steve Staeger. He's Geoff Sawtell. Let us know what you want to hear on the show, and we'll get it on the show. We're going to get out of here. We will see you next week. Hockey is back, my friends.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Steve Staeger and Geoff Sawtell, who have absolutely no business covering sports at all. They're just fans. You can tell them how wrong they are by tweeting at the show at 9cheapseats or email cheapseats@9news.com.